The sound of shattering glass was becoming the soundtrack of my life. Another crash echoed from the living room of the desolate cabin. I flinched, dropping the can of soup I'd been holding in the tiny kitchenette. It rolled across the uneven wooden floor, a pathetic metallic sound against the roaring blizzard outside. We were trapped. 3 days since our parents took the SUV down the mountain for supplies and got walled off by 10 feet of snow. Just me and my stepbrother, Jungkook, and his demons. I walked into the living area. It smelled like an open wound sawdust, ozone from the storm, and the sickeningly sweet stench of bourbon. Jungkook stood by the frosted picture window, shirtless despite the freezing draft. His back was to me. He was vibrating with an energy that terrified me. Another empty bottle sat on the coffee table next to a broken tumbler. "Jungkook," I said, my voice thinner than I wanted it to be. "Stop it, you're scaring me." He didn't turn around. He just tilted his head back, laughing bitterly at the ceiling. "Scaring you? Why, I'm just getting started. The silence in here is too loud. I need to break it. You're breaking everything else instead. Mom and Dad are going to come back to a disaster." He spun around then, and the look in his eyes stopped my heart dead. They weren't the warm doe eyes the world saw. They were vacant highways, dark and endless, and full of wreckage. He was wasted, far beyond the point of reason. He stumbled toward me, kicking the coffee table. It screeched against the wood floor. "Do you think I care what they find?" He snarled, looming over me. The smell of alcohol in his breath was nauseatingly strong. "They left us here, in this godforsaken freezer. They didn't mean to get stuck. You're drinking yourself into oblivion because you can't handle 5 minutes of being alone with your own teen thoughts." I pushed his chest. It was like pushing a brick wall. "You're pathetic, Jungkook. Drink another one, see if it fixes you this time." Spoiler alert, it won't. I knew I shouldn't have provoked him. I knew it. His hand shot out and slammed against the wall right next to my head. The cabin shook. I gasped, pressed flat against the rough wood paneling. He leaned in close. Too close. The forbidden space between step-siblings evaporated into toxic heat. His nose brushed against my jawline, inhaling sharply. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. "You want me to stop?" he whispered, his voice a low, dangerous rumble in his chest. It wasn't slurred anymore. It was terrifyingly lucid. "Yes," I choked out. "Please." "Put the bottle down." He pulled back just enough to look me in the eye. The intensity of his gaze felt like a physical weight. "Then give me a reason to." I stared at him, confused. "What?" A dark, twisted smirk ghosted across his lips. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the look of a man standing on a ledge. "You're always lecturing me, little sister. Always trying to fix the broken toy." His thumb traced the line of my jaw, a scorching touch that sent shivers down my spine. It was wrong. It was so incredibly wrong. "You want me sober?" "Fine, let's make a trade." His eyes dropped to my lips, then back up to my terrified gaze. The air in the cabin crackled, thicker than the snowstorm outside. "Give me something better than alcohol," he whispered hoarsely, "and I will leave it." POV wide. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the wooden beams of the ceiling, listening to the wind howl like a dying animal. I had locked my bedroom door, a flimsy little lock that a stiff breeze could break, let alone a man built like Jungkook, but he hadn't come. After he dropped that bomb on me, after he offered that twisted bargain, I had shoved him away and ran. He had just laughed a low, dark sound that followed me down the hall. Now the sub is out, and cabin is silent. I crept out of my room, wrapped in a thick knit blanket, feeling like an intruder in my own space. The living room was a graveyard of last night's rage. But it was empty. I found him in the kitchen. Jungkook was leaning against the counter, staring at a full bottle of amber whiskey. He looked wrecked. His hair was a mess of dark waves. He was wearing a gray hoodie that hung loose on his frame, sleeves pushed up to reveal the veins in his forearms. "Jungkook?" I whispered. He flinched. Just a micro movement, but I saw it. Slowly, he reached out, his hand wrapped around the neck of the bottle. My stomach dropped. Here we go again. I braced myself for the sound of the cap unscrewing, for the smell of the spirit to fill the air. But he didn't open it. He walked over to the sink, uncapped it, and tipped it upside down. Glug, glug. The sound was violent in the quiet room. The expensive liquor swirled down the drain, wasted. He didn't stop until the last drop fell. Then he dropped the empty glass bottle into the trash bin with a heavy thud. He gripped the edge of the sink, his knuckles turning white, his head hanging low. He was shaking. Tremors ran through his shoulders, withdrawal or rage or something else entirely. I break the silence again. "You were drunk last night," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my legs. "You didn't mean it." He turned his head slowly. The air left my lungs. His eyes weren't glassy anymore. They were sharp, laser-focused, and they were fixed on me with a terrifying intensity. I remember every word. "YN," he rasped. His voice was rough, like gravel scraping over velvet. Every single word. He took a step toward me. I took a step back, hitting the refrigerator. Trapped again. "I poured it out," he said, taking another step. "The vodka in the freezer? Gone. The stash in the pantry? Gone. There isn't a drop left in this cabin." He was standing right in front of me now. I could smell the mint of his toothpaste masking the faint, stale scent of yesterday's mistakes. But mostly I smelled him rain and musk. "I'm keeping my end of the deal," he murmured, bracing his hands on the fridge on either side of my head, boxing me in. He didn't touch me, but his body heat radiated onto mine, searing through my clothes. "Now you have to keep yours. It wasn't a deal," I stammered, my heart beating so hard I thought he could see it through my sweater. "It was a drunken ramming. You can't just replace an addiction with a person, Jungkook. That's sick. It's toxic. I don't care what you call it." He cut me off, leaning down until our foreheads were almost touching. His breathing was jagged. I feel like my skin is crawling. My head is splaying open. Every nerve in my body is screaming for a drink to numb this noise. He closed his eyes, inhaling deeply, drawing in my scent like it was oxygen. "But then," he whispered, opening his eyes to lock onto mine, "I look at you, and the noise. It gets quiet." My breath hitched. "Jungkook, we're family. Technically, he mocked, a dark glint in his eye. "But we didn't grow up together, did we? We met 3 years ago. You're not my sister by blood, and right now you definitely don't feel like a sister." He moved his hand, his thumb brushing against the pulse point of my neck. My pulse jumped under his touch. "You wanted me sober?" He traced the line of my throat. "Fine, but I need a replacement. I need a distraction. I need something to consume me so I don't tear this cabin apart." His thumb pressed harder, possessing me. "You're the designated driver now, YN. You're the high. So don't you dare tell me to stop. Because if I let go of you, I'm gonna pick that bottle back up. And next time, I won't put it down." His hand moved, fingers tangling in my hair at the nape of my neck, tilting my head back. I gasped as he lowered his face. I shivered violently, my hands instinctively clutching the front of his hoodie. "Stop! Jungkook, please. Tell me you don't feel that." He rasped against my skin, his teeth grazing my earlobe in a way that made my knees buckle. "Tell me your blood isn't racing just as fast as mine. You wanted to save me? This is the price. I don't want the bottle. I want the burn of you." Jungkook's pav. My head felt like it was being split open with a dull axe. Every tick of the wall clock sounded like a gunshot. The thirst wasn't just in my throat. It was in my bones, a cold, hollow ache that demanded to be filled. But then she walked in, wine smelling like vanilla and sleep, wrapped in that stupid oversized blanket. I looked at the sink, then at her. It wasn't even a choice. The alcohol numbed the pain, but she made the pain feel like something I wanted to keep. When I pinned her against the fridge, I could feel her trembling. It should have made me pull back, but it only fueled the fire. I needed her to be as wrecked as I was. I leaned down. I heard her breath hitch, that tiny, broken sound that I knew I'd spend the rest of my life trying to provoke. I wasn't just sober. I was hyper-aware. I could feel the pulse in her neck thrumming against my thumb. I could feel the way her chest rose and fell in jagged heaps. "Distract me," I whispered into the crook of her neck, my lips lingering on her skin. I didn't just want a kiss. I wanted to consume her. I wanted to crawl inside her soul and stay there until the world stopped shaking. I pulled back just an inch, my eyes searching hers. She looked terrified, yes, but there was a flicker of something else, a dark, forbidden curiosity. "You think the whiskey was dangerous?" I gripped her waist, pulling her flesh against me, letting her feel the desperate, hard lines of my body. "The whiskey just made me forget. You? You make me remember everything I'm not supposed to want. Tormenting us both. I'm going to be a nightmare to live with, YN. I promised, my voice breaking. I'm going to follow you into every room. I'm going to watch you breathe. I'm going to need you more than I ever needed a drink. Tell me to stop now or admit that you're my new addiction. She didn't tell me to stop. She just closed her eyes and let out a sob that sounded like a surrender. And that was it. The bottle was dead. Long live the new sin. 72 hours. That's how long it had been since the last drop of whiskey went down the drain. By medical standards, Jungkook should have been shaking. He should have been vomiting, sweating out the toxins, climbing the walls, but he wasn't. He was unervingly still. The cabin had turned into a cocoon of twisted silence. I sat on the rug by the fireplace, hugging my knees. Jungkook lay on the sofa behind me. He wasn't sleeping. He never slept anymore. I could feel his eyes on the back of my neck, a physical weight, heavier than a hand. He reached out, his fingers tangling into my hair, tugging gently until I leaned my head back against his knee. It had become a reflex. He touched. I yielded. You're warm, he murmured, his voice sounding dazed, like a man in a trance. The fire is dying. Jungkook, I whispered, my eyes fluttering shut. I'm not talking about the fire. He turned me in his arms, his movements slow and deliberate. He looked at me with a terrifying clarity. I can taste the air you breathe out. I can feel the exact moment your heart speeds up when I touch you. I never had this with the bottle. It was always a fog. But this is a forced fire. He leaned in, his lips grazing the corner of my mouth. Tell me you don't want this destruction as much as I do. We go back to the city soon. I choked out, trying to cling to reality. The snowplows, they'll be here. This ends, Jungkook. You go to rehab. We go back to being step-siblings, hands snapped up, cupping my jaw with a possessive strength. There is no back, YN. I've seen what's under your skin now. I felt the way you tremble when I look at you. Do you think I'm going to let some doctor talk me into letting you go? I am not a drug. I cried out, the desperation finally breaking through. You're right, he rasped, his eyes darkening to obsidian. You're much worse. Jungkook's pav. The thirst was gone. Or rather, it had evolved. Looking at the fireplace, I didn't see wood burning. I saw the way her skin glowed in the light. As I pulled her against me, the sensation was electric. Every nerve ending was firing. I trailed my lips along her collarbone, feeling the frantic skip of her heart. Stepsister, I whispered against her skin, the word tasting like iron and honey. A title meant to keep us apart, yet here we are. You think you're saving me by taking the bottle away? You're just handing me a much sharper blade. Was the taste of 3 days of agony and 3 years of suppressed hunger. I tasted her surrender, felt her fingers dig into the fabric of my hoodie, pulling me closer as if she wanted to disappear into me. I pulled back just an inch. You're the high that never ends, YN. I'm not going back to the whiskey. Why would I touch the dirt when I finally tasted the sun? Then the blue and red lights hit the frost on the window. The world was coming to take her back. The real world where we were supposed to be family. I gripped her wrist as she tried to pull away toward the window. My heart felt like it was being ripped out of my chest without anesthesia. I looked at her, my savior, my ruin, and I realized I didn't want to be rescued. They're here to take you away, I whispered, my voice breaking. Jungkook, let go, she said, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and hope. I pulled her into one last, bruising embrace, my lips pressed hard against her ear. You think you saved me? I let out a hollow, jagged laugh. I didn't get sober, baby. I just switched poisons, and you're going to kill me so much slower than the whiskey ever could. POV, why? The heavy thud of boots on the porch echoed through the cabin. The door burst open. Flashlights cut through the gloom. Voices shouted names. I scrambled up, running toward the rescuers, tears streaming down my face. I was safe. I was finally safe. But as I looked back, Jungkook was still sitting on the floor in the dark, bathed in the red glow of the police lights. He wasn't looking at the rescuers. He was looking right at me, and in that look, I realized the terrifying truth. We were leaving the mountain, but I wasn't free. He had traded the bottle for me, and he was never, ever going to put me down.